And I am beyond grateful to be accepting this first award for the Military Spouse of the Year. And I accept it not only in my name, but in the name of all the other military spouses. I would like to tell you a little bit about my life as a military spouse, which may be quite different than the experience you're having now, and there are also quite a lot of similarities. But first, I'd like to tell you where we are now in our life journey. A few years ago, we decided that the house that we were living in after our retirement was too large and too much maintenance for us to keep up. So we made the decision to move to Spring Harbor here in Columbus, Georgia, which is a very nice retirement home. And we were pleased to find after we moved in that there were many military people that we had known before, plus a lot of new friends from other places. And I'd also like to tell you a little bit about how we met. We had really quite a fairy tale meeting. I was a senior in high school here in Columbus, and my husband Ralph had been wounded in the Korean War, had been sent to Martin Army Hospital, and was an inpatient there for over a year. My father was reading the newspaper, and I saw on the back page a photograph of a young soldier who had been wounded and was in the hospital here in Columbus, or rather Fort Benning. I made the comment that I thought he was extremely handsome, and my father lowered the paper, eyeballed me, and said, "Jeannie, this is a wounded veteran, not a young boy." When I went to school that day, one of my teachers had the photograph cut out on her desk, and when class was over, she asked if some of us girls would go out and visit him. She had taught him in the 7th grade. She knew his family, assured he was a nice young man. No one responded because girls didn't go visit soldiers in hospitals, not if you wanted to date the Columbus boys. So I took the photograph home because she asked me to, put it in a book, and didn't give it another thought until Christmas time when a friend came home from college at the University of Georgia. She asked me if I would go with her to Fort Benning to visit this boy that she had met when he went through jump school. And I said, "Only if you'll go with me to visit this other young man." And she said, "What's his name?" And I said, "I have no idea." We went home, opened the book, and when she saw the photograph, she said, "That's the exact same person." Well, we went out together, and her name was Peggy, and Peggy was very brunette, and I happened to be very blonde at the time. So when we walked into the room, Ralph's father and mother were there, and Ralph's father was quite a tease. And when we entered the room, he said, Ralph had his fortune told last night on the ward by a soldier, and was told that a blonde and a brunette would visit him, and that he would marry one of them. We all laughed. We thought it was a great joke, and it embarrassed Ralph so much. He turned absolutely crimson, looked at his father with, like, please. But we kept up the banter, and we had a really nice visit. But when we left, I said to Peggy, "Oh, he is adorable. I think I'm going to continue this." And she said, "Well, I'm going to write to him," because that was part of the second part of the fortune telling, that it would be a long correspondence. So that is the way we left. And let me show you a photograph of what I saw in the newspaper. Now, wouldn't you make that trip to Fort Benning? Our courtship started very slowly. He was a slow mover. And we really became friends before we became interested in each other romantically. But by Easter time of the next year, he asked me to go home to visit his family over the Easter holiday. They had a small cottage at St. Simon's Island, and I went there. And I think it was at that point that I realized we really were in love, and we talked about the idea of getting married. I came home, told my parents that I was in love and I wanted to get married, and my father absolutely said, "Absolutely no, you're too young You haven't been to school, you're an unfinished product, and I don't approve of this. We argued a little bit, talked about it, and finally Ralph said, well, I'm going to speak to him anyway. So we planned a nice evening. Mother cooked a dinner, nice dinner. He came up on the front porch, and my father brushed past me, walked out, and the two of them went off in a car and were gone for over an hour. When they came back, Ralph said, Jeannie, we need to have a talk. He said, your father doesn't want us to marry, and I don't want us to marry without your parents' approval. So I will wait 4 years for you if that's what you want. And I was furious. I was mad at Ralph, I was mad at my father, and finally, we had a negotiation. I told my father if I went off to school for 1 year, if he would approve after that year, if we still wanted to get married, he would approve. And we agreed to do that, and that's exactly what we did. A year later, we married on November the 25th, 1952, which happens to be my parents' anniversary, and happens also to be the anniversary of the date in which my husband was wounded on Hill 205, which has quite a history in military annals. So it was the beginning of our marriage, and from there we traveled the world like most of you. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I saw myself as a military spouse. I felt that I was the foundation upon which the family was built. Things were a little differently then. Most wives did not work. The husband worked, the mother was a homemaker, and I certainly fell into that role. I did a lot of volunteer work at the hospital. I was a Girl Scout leader, and of course I did all the things the Officers' Wives Club requested you to do. I did all of that. But my focus was my family. I saw it as my responsibility to make a home at each station that we were assigned. I often took most of our furniture that we could, and I tried to recreate the same house we had just left. I felt like it gave the children stability. And we spent a lot of time as a family. When he was gone on maneuvers, for 6 weeks or something, I spent a lot of time with other wives and other children, and we were all in the same boat, so we supported each other that way. I think there are a lot of similarities and a lot of dissimilarities in the way your life is and the way mine was. For one thing, communication between spouses has changed dramatically. In World War II, when a soldier was deployed, and it was all military, all male at that time, they were gone for what they called the duration, and that could be 3 or even 4 years, with absolutely no communication with the family. Usually, the only communication you got was from an MP who would show up at your door and tell you your husband had been killed or been seriously wounded. So that was really hard for the people that were back home waiting to hear. In Korea, we had only snail mail. We would write letters, but it would be 2 or 3 weeks to reach each other. So while I may read that he's doing well as I opened that letter, all I knew he could be dead on the battlefield. So there was the long gap of no information. In the Vietnamese War, we had tapes. We sent tapes back and forth. But again, that was very similar in the time lag between what he was telling me and what was actually happening to him. So those are the more negative things. I feel like now, today, you can FaceTime and you can talk to your loved ones every night. The children see pictures of Daddy. When Ralph returned from South America after 1 year, we had a 2-year-old, and every night before I went to bed, I would show a picture of Daddy, and I'd say, "Kiss Daddy goodnight," holding the photograph. When he came home and I said, "This is Daddy," she burst into tears and ran and got the photograph and said, "This is Daddy." And it took her 3 or 4 months to reaccustom to having this man in our family. People have often asked me, what do you think it takes to be a successful military spouse? And I feel the main thing you need is a great sense of self, of who you are, not as a spouse, not as a mother, but as a person. And I think in order to do that, you have to build on your own interest, have interest outside the family. I know at one point a family counselor told me, she asked me for the definition of marriage, and I said to her, well, I suppose the Bible says the two shall become one. And she said, absolutely, that is not right. You are two separate people, and what you are, you're in the harness together to work for the good of the team, but you have to go out and enrich yourself, enrich with your own interest. Then when you come back together, it's a much more interesting relationship. And I thought those were powerful words, and I've tried to do that. For me personally, I have found that journaling really helped. And if I put down in black and white what's worrying me or bothering me, it clarifies for me what the problem is. I'm also an artist and an interior design. I had my own interior design business for 35 years, and I have done oil painting as a hobby, and I find that very therapeutic. So I don't know whether it's running or aerobics or whatever it is that you fulfill yourself outside of the family. I think that is a very important thing. And also friendships with other people who are in similar situations of you. We all enrich each other. I first met Amy and Leah and learned about this project of military spouses when I attended an art workshop here in Columbus that they were giving. And there were probably about 25 or 30 wives there. And when we walked into the room, it was just full of art objects that you can pile and make something, a 3D dimensional painting or art, you could cut out of a magazine and glue and post and try to do a message of some sort, something that represented your thoughts. And then we sat in a circle, and if you wanted to, you could express to everybody what your art meant. Many people did not feel free, comfortable doing that, and I thought that was fine. I had a painting, which I did, and I have a photograph here. And to me, this represented our family. This is the family as a whole. This perhaps represents one of us each. Maybe this is me and our 3 children. And what I tried to show by connecting the dots, that we were all connected to the family. That was the most important unit, but each of them had their own relationship. So it was sort of an abstract of my thoughts. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of my feelings with you. Thank you.